Hello and welcome to the Live as Lions podcast. Today's episode, I am interviewing Jayson John Evans on how to live wild and free as a musician and creative. Jayson John Evans, the man with a marketing and philosophy obsession who is passionate about helping musicians dominate the new music industry. From getting signed to owning an independent record label, touring full-time to full-time tour managing, working with world-class producers to owning a record studio, writing award-winning songs to mentoring hundreds of songwriters, Jayson has seen almost everything that the music industry has to offer. He is also the founder of IAMN Northbound and ListenPages and the author of best-selling 4D Songwriter, which is currently being used in music business courses at Harvard. He is one of Australia's best and a dear friend of ours and one of our favorite lions. I brought him on the show today because if you're a musician or a creative, Jayson has incredible insight and resources that can help empower you to reach your full potential and live wild and free. So let's meet Jayson. Okay, everybody, welcome to the Live as Lions show. And today we have Jayson. So Jayson, welcome all the way from Australia. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me here.
Well, we are super excited to have you here. So you have an incredible intro on a story of what you've been up to for the past years. So share with us a little bit about what you're doing right now, and so we can get into it.
Yeah, so right now, that's interesting. Starting in the present day, I'm currently right now working with music artists to help them create music-centered movements. My whole thing is to not try to do what it seems everyone else tries to do in the music industry, which is trying to help people get famous or grow their vanity metrics so they can look cool. I help people create real authentic movements that are built on a core message that has a real intention and ability to change lives of those that resonate with it. So way more of a long-term play to make a bigger difference and leave a bigger legacy with what you do than just trying to get more streams on your Spotify. And it seems to be doing well. The people that I'm doing this with, of late, recently, it's caught on with some pretty big names, and it's amazing to hear that people higher up in the industry are looking at what I'm doing and thinking that it's the future of how people should be utilizing social media. So it's a crazy ride. If you asked me that same question a month ago, I would have a totally different answer. It moved so quickly, but that's more or less where I'm at the moment.
Well, and that's exactly what I want to share about just how you and I met. So I'm a musician. Everybody knows that from Live as Lions. And if you're a musician in this day and age, you are probably a lot like me, constantly getting people writing you saying, hey, let me market you. Let me just, take you to the next level. And I feel like it's every day just someone else writing you. And it's always the same message. It's always pay me a lot of money so that I can help you make a lot of money. And I think it was like 2 years ago, you reached out to me and you said, hey, I've been listening to your music. I've been following your message and it's really speaking to me. And that was first off something that was very different, that someone actually was listening to the music and listening to the message and not just, going off the list of musicians to contact. But that was something that really stood out to me, was that you were really passionate about taking my message as a musician to the next level and actually helping amplify that, which is something that I feel like sets you aside from all the other guys. So why are you passionate about helping people with their message?
Well, yeah, I mean, this all started because I used to be a music artist back in the day, and right. I didn't even really realize it at the time, but all of the times that I wrote authentically with a message behind it about how I was really feeling were the times in which people were reaching out to me saying how much the songs I had written had changed their lives. Yet whenever I wrote to kind of be trendy or write to sound like another band that I liked, to sound like their music, and lyrics didn't really mean much, I didn't really get that same response. But it wasn't until my main band that I was in for like 8 years broke up and I started a new project that I went through the first time I was ever diagnosed with a mental health issue. And I went through about 9 months of like massive depressive disorder, and it was rock bottom as far as my life goes, or at the time I considered it rock bottom. Turns out there was a few levels lower than that. I was still in a few years to come, but still back then it was my rock bottom at the time, and I started to write my way through it, I guess. I went to therapy, I was on medication, but the thing that mattered the most was songwriting. It really helped me. And I started to write this album that I was like, I really think that if I wrote openly and honestly about my mental health journey, it's going to help me. But I think even better, if it helps someone else, then it's totally worth it. And I remember when I first released it, I came out and I said publicly, like, hey, everyone, this album is about my journey through mental health. And if you're going through it, I hope it helps you too. And I actually had friends of mine that were in in the music industry, like locally, like said to me, I shouldn't do it. Like they advised me against it. They're like, man, this does not reflect well. Like it almost comes off as a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And because mental health like now is much more talked about, but I'm talking, this is nearly 10 years ago now. And it was still not very much at the time, especially in like the alternative rock scene, where
Definitely
everyone tries to act too cool. Yeah. So I did it anyway, and I brought it out, and we're a brand new band with like no real fan base at all. And it wasn't even like the residual fan base I had left over from my previous band were following us still. It'd been quite a long period of time between bands, a couple of years. And we started from scratch, and we got like more downloads on our album in the first week than I'd ever gotten in my previous band. And we were a band for 8 years and like signed to a label and touring nationally and stuff. Like we did a fair bit. So this band outperformed my other band when it comes to that metric in the first week. And it was because so many like media outlets got behind the message of the album, and they were saying like, oh, this band, we don't know who they are, but he's trying to push a message of mental health. We can get behind that. Yet when I was in my previous band, I was always wondering why the press didn't write about us. Like it'd take us a while to get the press behind us. Yet press were calling me up to write articles about me for this. And I was like, wow, I've done something right here. But I didn't realize how right I got it, because it was only a few months later that two separate people, separated by about a month, completely unrelated, and they had no idea the other person had messaged me, but two people said privately, they said, Jayson, you don't know me, and I don't know if you'll read this message, but I just want to let you know that your album literally saved my life. Like I was planning on taking my own life, but it was this album that at the last minute changed my mind. And I was like, damn, like two different people, like, because I decided to be open and honest. And I was like, I think this is the start of something big. I'm not going to tell people, like, I'm not going to try to position myself to say, like, here's how to do how I did it. I just realized that I was just scratching the surface. So my whole intention was to then go and discover why what I did worked. And as I started to and then once I figured out, share it with everyone. And as I figured that out, I've realized multi-dimensional aspects to the world's biggest music artists and how they've used these similar techniques to grow their audiences. And then I started to realize no one else is talking about this stuff. So it felt almost like my role to do that. So that's why when I found you, I was looking for artists that weren't just trying to write for the sake of being trendy, but when I saw people that aligned with what I was researching at the time, because at the time that we first met, I hadn't even released my book yet. I was still writing it. Right. So I wanted to find artists that synergized with it. If you remember, we did that call where I was just like, here's everything that I'm doing at once and just throw it all on you. Because it's like, if I can find an artist that is genuinely here with the right intentions, and that is to be creative and share that message with people that resonate with it, and to just kind of filter out all the people who are just trying to look for the next shortcut to fame, then, that's where magic happens for sure.
Absolutely. And I remember at that time, I was in the middle of writing my album Treasures of the Cave, and that was when you contacted me, which that whole album is about my personal experience of going through one of the hardest, darkest times of my life, where I said that it feels like I'm in a cave. It's dark, it's scary, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this, I don't see straight, but I was in that. And I remember in that time having hope that, just like you're talking about, that writing through this, processing through this through music, I'll be able to get through it. And through that, I also was able to find treasures through that dark time and then bring them out and share them with the world. And you were such a big part of just encouraging that and saying, yeah, you got to get that message out. That's how you're going to empower people to be, to be lions and to live as lions, is to take all that fear and actually do something positive with it, which is something that I always say when you've gone through tragedy, when you've gone through heartbreak, when you've gone through really hard things in your life, you walk with a limp, and you're going to walk with that limp through the rest of your life, because you're always going to, remember your story, remember what you've been through, but you keep walking. And when people come to you and they're like, hey, let me give you advice, let me help you, let me mentor you, or whatever it is, and they've not walked with a limp, it's almost like they don't understand the language in which you're speaking, and they don't understand you. And so when you came and you were like, let me hear your story, let me hear what you're trying to say, and then you shared yours with me, I was very much able to say, okay, this guy understands. He's been through his own cave. He's found his treasures. And this is what, and he's taken that and he's absolutely, given it to the world. And it's been really exciting for me, who's known you for a few years now, to see you kind of go through all of this and what you've offered. So, okay, with that, so being in your own cave, what was it, the light that got you out of the cave? And also what was it that convicted you in that really hard season to kind of keep going and to bring those treasures out?
This is the thing, is that when you say like that, it makes me think of all the caves I've been through. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
not just one.
every day is a cave, like cave in itself, like you can see it as on a micro or on a macro level. But as far as the one, when I wrote my album, to refer back to that, it's a great question. It was just the fact that when I first went into depression, I was one person and I emerged a different person. And it's like, maybe cheesy and cliche as that sounds, it's the absolute truth. Like, I didn't know who I was at that point, and I hadn't found myself. Like, the Jayson back then was not who I am today. And once you understand that, how important transformation is, in my opinion, and that everything, again, another cliche, but it just aligns so well with my life. Like, everything happens for a reason. Like, it was only not even a year, maybe I think it was about a year after I recovered, that I got prescribed medication that I shouldn't have been prescribed by a doctor who just was essentially negligence. And it led to about 3 years of me not leaving my house, and like a year of recovery in bed, as I had to relearn how to like function as a human. And it's like, so
3 years. That's incredible. Yeah.
3 years of not really leaving my house. And then about 6 years, it became up to 6 years, from 3 to 6 of like assisted. Because I wasn't even able to go out in public, because I couldn't function properly. My brain didn't work. And
that was a real cave.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
For real. But it's crazy because I've had my fair share of getting kicked in the stomach. So if there's anyone who should have a resentment toward life, it should be the guy who essentially lost all of his 20s. You know what I mean? And it's only been over the last couple of years that I've been getting back to normal, but it's still just transformation. And every day that you realize that you're growing into the person you need to be so that you can be prepared later in life. Like, sure, when you're there in the moment, you can't see outside of the cave. But once you get to that point in which you realize that cave was not just the way I see it, this might not be how your metaphor works, but it's not like you've gone into a cave, gotten lost, and emerged back out through the way you found. It's like a system that's going to lead you to a different exit. And once you get there, you're a different person. And I genuinely, when I was going through everything I was going through, I would have traded it for anything. I would never wish it upon anyone. I still would never do that, but I would have legitimately never ever said it was worth it. But now, emerging on the other side and where I'm at now, it was life shaping me into who I needed to be, so I can help people to the extent and to the level I can now. Who knows where I would have been if I didn't go through that journey. I was a different person back then. So now, in order for me to be able to give back to the world in the way that I do, I had to go through what I went through. So now I understand that every other curveball or kick to the stomach I've gotten since then, it makes sense. I've gone through some crazy personal life changes over the last couple of years. Some unexpected stuff came around. It was a year of figuring all that out, but it makes sense now. And it never hit me as hard as it should. I would expect it to, because you learn that it's just life shaping you into who you need to be. And I saw this really cool thing ages ago where someone said something about Oprah getting fired at 23 from her job or something like that. And someone was like, can you imagine firing Oprah? And the other person said, no, because it wasn't Oprah. It was some little punk girl who had to be fired in order for her to become Oprah. And it's that type of mentality, for sure. Right. That's the way I like to see it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you said that, going through the cave and who it it kind of creates you to being. That's the biggest treasure. It's not,
Mm.
you learn these lessons and you learn these things, of course, and you want to take them and come back out with it, but it's also just who you become. And something that I found in that season that I think resonates with a lot of people is, I think it's when you get to that point of being in that dark time in that season, that metaphor of that cave, and you say, I'm not leaving here until I am a different person,
Yeah, like a
until
cocoon.
until I can transform. And you kind of, it's that metaphor of like, your eyes learn to adjust and seeing in the darkness, and you learn to kind of stay in that and see differently. And then eventually you come out of it, but you are a totally different person. So for you with that season, it sounds like you kind of went in as a musician, and then you came out of it and kind of doing what it is that you're doing now. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I haven't thought about it that way, but that's kind of how it shaped me. I just realized that there was that moment of clarity where I realized that I was holding myself to standards, like, or accountable to, I guess, accountable to, I was comparing myself or grading myself on standards so that I had set when I was 16. And when I was young, I wanted to be in a band like Blink-182. And that same band didn't sound like Blink-182 when we're adults, like when we'd grown up a bit. Like the band changed, but I was still like thinking that that's the level that I wanted to get to. And you'd be disappointed if things didn't go that way, but I still wasn't even really trying. Like now, knowing the industry, what effort was I putting in aside from writing songs and playing live shows? Like I didn't know anything. But it's like, I got to a point in which I had to assess going, where do I want to be in 10 years time? Like, what do I want to get out of my life? And as much as I'd been a music artist my entire life, and it was just my entire identity, it got to the point in which I realized like I'd grown up and I'd changed a little bit. This is before I went through my big transformation, but I knew at that point that music likely wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. Even if everything went to plan, I wouldn't be satisfied. It wouldn't be something that fulfilled me. But what would fulfill me is that fact that I was a songwriting coach at the time. I was working at that job so I could have the time freedom and financial freedom to tour. And I really enjoy working with other artists. I ran a recording studio too. So I would like record all day, then teach all afternoon and all night, till about dinner time, that is. But I'd be working with other artists, and that really fulfilled me, is helping other people express their creative vision. Because I mean, if I do it myself, I can only help like a small amount of people, but if I help other people help people, then I can cover way more ground. And I feel like it takes a lot. And I think that people need to self-reflect, even if it's only every couple of years. So you know what I mean? It's like, but you have to do that and ask yourself, like, are you still comparing yourself to like a standard that you set when you were much younger? Because you knew nothing about life when you were young and first came up with these dreams and aspirations. So when I say be realistic, I don't mean to be depressing and saying that, you can't be what you want it to be. As you say, the treasures are found. There are bigger things to find. You're just distracted and blinded by things that are old and stale. So find what will make you happy. And that's where things can actually happen.
Right. So coming out of this cave, then, from what I'm hearing is like, you kind of you shifted and you took this huge leap of faith to kind of go from doing just the music into kind of creating this whole world that you've created now, which is enormous and wild. So what was it for you that kind of kept you going on that track? And you've talked to me a lot about how it was super important for you to make sure that you stuck with your values over anything else. So share with me a little bit about that, and also a little bit about that struggle from going from doing music into doing marketing into doing what you're doing today.
Yeah. I mean, when I first contacted you, I wasn't one of those people saying, give me money and I'll help you. It was, let's get on a call. I just want to throw everything at you and see if anything sticks. And that was my mentality. I've always been criticized by people close to me, family and close friends, for monetizing too late. I am a notorious I will do everything for free. And I did. I dedicated years of my life to working absolutely for free with music artists, testing my methods, refining it so I could turn it into my book. And even when my book came out, I didn't sell it at retail price. I've discounted it as low as I could possibly make it to cover Facebook ads. I just want to get the message out there. But what kept me on this journey, and I have to say, don't get it twisted. Like, I'm not someone who wakes up every single day incredibly motivated and like up at 5 a.m. going for a jog, can't wait to help music artists. Like, I have the most bittersweet love-hate relationship with the music industry. Like, I've been
I
in it
think
my
every
entire life.
musician does. Every musician
Yeah,
does.
yeah.
Yes.
And I think people might, I think people get confused. I think, sorry, they get confused with me sometimes, and they're just like, oh man, how do you stay so productive and like motivated and optimistic? And I'm like, no, you just see the side of me that I don't show that other side sometimes, but sometimes I do. I'm open and transparent and honest with it. But I can't deny the fact that with no better explanation, I just feel like it's what I'm put on the earth to do.
Yeah,
like
it's your calling.
Every time I try to get away from it, even if I try, there's been times in my life that I've tried to, like, I was running my recording studio, and then at that point in time, I was like, that's it, I'm over it. Like, I'd done that for 10 years. Music artists had worn me out because I dealt with too many like really frustrating artists in a row that had egos bigger than my house, and it would just drove me to the point where I was like, I'm over it. Like, it drove me to just complete, the flame went out as far as the recording studio went. So I'm like, cool, I'm getting into something like totally different. I love marketing. I've loved it my whole life. I've never studied it, and this is a couple years before we met, right? And I was like, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to pursue that passion and step away from the music industry. It's a big call. First time in my life, I'm not doing something in the music industry, but here we go. And that was about 6 months until life just corrected course and pulled me back into the music industry with all the marketing knowledge. And then I realized how it could be applied to music artists. And that was the start of that journey of realizing how to come back. But no matter how much I try to get away from it, even if I try to, it's like what I'm meant to do. And that's why whenever I do what feels right, things happen. Like, I felt called to write my book, even though I was like, at times, who am I to write it? I'm not famous. Like, I can't say this is how I did it. Why would anyone read a book from a nobody? And we hit bestseller. Like,
and now it's famous.
I don't know about that, but it's crazy. Like, and because of that, I was able to help so many people.
Right.
And then I'm like, damn, this is where I'm meant to be. So all of those little things, like, and this is what I try to tell people, because I do work one-on-one with a few music artists, and I'm trying to get people to learn from the mistakes I made. And one of them was not being able to see those small little sparks that eventually turn into fire. It's like, people will only notice fire once it's raging, like, and everything's on fire. Like, yeah, I did it. But you've got to look at those small little things, because they're all the hints that what you're doing is right. Like, it's what you're here to do and what you're meant to be doing creatively. Like, it works the same way. Like, I should have noticed it. To go back to what I said in the beginning, I should have noticed that, like, when I wrote those songs, that those are the ones that made people reach out, but I didn't notice it at the time. But that would have given me clues about what I was here to do. Then again, you could just say that I was here to learn that exact story to get me to where I am now. But, you know, if you could go back, it would be the application of thinking I definitely look at. But yeah, if you are on the right track, there's not much resistance. You kind of just go with the flow, and things just end up working out. Not always. You always have to put work in, of course. I'm not saying that you can do nothing and things will just get handed to you, but the effort you put in will be rewarded back 5 times more than if you're in the wrong stream, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. I mean, especially with what you're talking about with the conviction part, because we talk a lot about this in our home, and just as kind of our motivator of the difference between passion and conviction. Like, passion is something that, you know, can be fleeting. It can feel more as an emotion and something that comes and you're really excited about something, and that brings motivation, and that brings, you know, all the energy that you need to keep going. But when something happens, or it's not as fun, or things aren't working out and the flame is smaller, the passion dies. But conviction is consistent. And when you're convicted by something that, like, this is what, especially a calling, like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, that is always kind of the engine that is pushing you forward, even if the motivation and the emotions aren't there, which is what we're passionate about empowering people with, which is to live as lions, wild and free. So here at Live as Lions, that's the name of us. We defined wild and free as knowing who you are and what you're called to do. And that, for me, is conviction. I am convicted, you know, that this is who I am, all the good, the bad. And this is what I was put on this earth to do, and I'm going to do it. And even if that means some days it's bringing in no money, and some days it's hard, and I'm the only person here doing it, And I think a lot of artists can completely connect to that, of just, when you have that conviction as an artist and that desire to really get that message out, or that's what you're here to do, there's nothing that's going to stop you, even if it is putting you in the hardest seasons of your life. But for you, you said to me once, which really stood out to me, you said, you're not just a musical artist, you're a creative, and music is your weapon of choice. And that really stood out to me, because that's always been something that I have felt, as if you're an artist, if you're a musician, then, that's your weapon of what it is, that's the tool that you have to kind of get your message and bring it to the rest of the people that you're supposed to be speaking it to. Is that something that you felt like was kind of your driving force as well? It's like, this is now my weapon and this is what I'm supposed to be doing with it.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the most important mindset shifts that I think needs to occur with anyone looking to do anything, like with involving dealing with other people. You know what I mean? Like, if you're looking to improve or provide value to their life in some kind of way or another, like you have to consider that. And that note, it's awesome that that's what you remember, because that's one of my favorite things that I realized when I was researching for my book, just realizing that's what music artists were. And I said it, like, it's legitimately, like, I think in one of the first few chapters of my book, I make that a really strong point, saying to understand the rest of this book, you need to understand, like, stop looking down the narrow mindset of you just write music and that's what you do. You're zoom back and you're creative, and music is just your weapon of choice. Now, once you realize that, you realize all the other weapons that you have available to you that most music artists aren't using. And that's where the multi-dimensional idea comes into it. But if you think back to what creativity is, like, I mean, creativity is just a few steps in from like raw consciousness. And I don't know what's beyond that, but like, that's who we really are. And then from that, we have this creative vision in which we want to communicate we want to communicate to the world. But like, we want to communicate that vision, to the world. But the thing is that we decide to put it through music. Now, creative arts are a collective name for, these types of people, because they are all the same. They're all creatives. But a lot of the time music artists will be like, oh, I'm nowhere near a painter or an actor, but they're just people with creative visions that are using other weapons of choices. Right. But to remove yourself from that limiting mindset is exactly what needs to occur in order to, I mean, again, as cliche as it sounds, but to find to your true potential, you need to do that,
Right. Know who you are and what your weapon is. So when I say to you, living wild and free as a musician, what would you say that looks like?
I honestly believe it's what you were talking about before. I really think what you said about the difference between it was passion and conviction, right?
Right.
Yeah, you did a better job of explaining what I've tried to explain to people. So I definitely will be stealing that when I'm trying to explain it to people.
No way. I'm writing a whole book on it now.
And then I'll just reference your book. Because I've always tried to explain it between the difference between motivation and discipline. Because a lot of the times people will say, I need to find motivation. It's like, no, you need to find discipline, because discipline will keep you straight when you aren't motivated, and motivation is fleeting. But with what you've said, it aligns more with what I'm trying to do, because I'm not, discipline kind of sometimes feels like an obligation, and it might be sometimes. You need to do it when you don't feel like you want to, but you've got to. But if you are truly convicted, I guess, is that the right way to say it?
Yeah.
If you have that conviction, that will drive you, and you won't need to ever force yourself. So I think it's a way better way to explain it. But to live, I really believe the best way to do that is to find what truly is your conviction. And once you do find that, as you said, that's where the freedom comes from, because you don't, like, you've got me reflecting over my own journey. Like, when my book was selling and things were super busy, like, that was like amazing. And for some reason at the time I thought, okay, cool, I'm just going to leverage this and just ride it upward. But due to personal life stuff, due to me figuring out how to run multiple different business things at once while all being self-funded with not charging really for anything. So I don't know where the money's coming from, but I was able to like build out the music marketing software we're creating and stuff. But I've made significantly less Like I've gone back to earning barely anything at times. And
Right.
there was legit a time where I was talking to one of the artists I was working with, and he said to me, I just said it in passing conversation, and he was like, he kind of referred back to, I said, wait a minute, like that's crazy. And it was just that I actually wasn't taking any income from the artists I work with. It would go to paying my team so they could get the software built. And I was not even taking a cut. It was just paying my team. And he was like, man, that's a sign of a leader. And I didn't say that to be like, look how great I am, but it made me stop and realize going, yeah, if I'm prepared to sacrifice without even thinking, I didn't have to make that decision. It just was the right thing to do. Then that's the conviction speaking. And to me, that's freedom. Because who cares about money? You know what I mean? Like if it allows you to live the life that you want to live, who cares about anything else? Like there was times like legitimately where I kind of reflected on this journey and was like, what if it's all for nothing? You know, at low points and stuff. And then I thought to myself one day, I was like, if this is all for nothing, like it doesn't go anywhere, it's already gone somewhere. And I've already helped people. So it's just the finishing to that chapter. So enjoy the ride while it's here. It could be staying around, way longer. But who else gets to say that they get to live out their dream for any amount of time? And then I went from feeling like depressed to feeling blessed. You know what I mean? Like, I can't believe I get to do this. And it's that mindset
That's a bumper
shift.
sticker in itself. Depressed to blessed.
Depressed to blessed. Yeah, exactly. But it comes down to that because I genuinely just being able to change my perspective on why I get to do this. It's like, sure, there's parts of you that always would love for it to be something that you could live on full time and it be your, you know, dream job. And the thing is, the truth is I get to do this full time and that's the best thing ever. Like I'm not buying a yacht anytime soon. I'm not like an internet millionaire or anything like that. But if I can get enough to pay the bills and do this, then it saves me working a normal job and I get to do something that truly fulfills me. So that's the type of thing that I try to encourage with people is not trying to see the top of the mountain and not settling for anything less. I feel like that's a really straight up a toxic mindset that's going around these days is like, I'm aiming for this and I will not accept anything less. And somehow people confuse that as empowering. And it's not, it's setting unreal. Like it might sound like that when you say it out loud, but what you're doing internally is just making the bar so high for yourself that you won't be happy with any progress. Because even if you get an amazing opportunity and do something really cool and like really propel yourself forward, it's only going to look like you move forward a couple of meters and what you're trying to do is a mountain. So take it one step at a time and be thankful for that, because that's what's going to keep you definitely like, well, a bunch of stuff, fueled, motivated, on the right track, but mostly just to find that centered fulfillment within yourself to know what you're doing is right.
Yeah. That constant streaming of that. Yeah. So taking all of that now that you've experienced and you've learned and you see that in artists, which is something that not everybody is able to see, and saying that's the biggest value and that's who you need to be. How practically, what are a few things that you would say you do to help empower musicians to live wild and free in that aspect?
Well, first of all, when I work with music artists, the very first thing that I do before anything else, like it might be confusing for people listening now to hear this. I mean, it's confusing for the music artists themselves sometimes, but I don't usually listen to their music. Like there are some music artists I've worked with one-on-one and I haven't heard any of their songs. And you would think, well, that's a bit strange. Like you're working with them to market their music. It's like, I don't need to hear the music. Like I need to know what the message is, because my job is to help them figure out who needs to hear that message and then how to get that message in front of those people in a way that resonates with them. And because of that, the very first thing I do is not sit down and try to work out with them if they should have put that second bridge in or if that's the right chord to end the chorus on. I go back and I say to them, why do you write music in the first place? Like, what is your creative vision? How can we find what and I call it your motivation with a capital M, like what motivates you to create stuff. A better word now I'm realizing should be what's your conviction, but I call it your motivation. It's my book, so I have to roll with it.
I need
but
to
essentially I help
this.
yeah, quickly before everybody got lawyers on the phone. But yeah, it's like I want to find that with people, because essentially I break everything down into a really simple 4-step process to market anything. Is why do you do what you do? Who needs to hear that message? Where are they? And how do you speak to them? And it's essentially it. And if you can figure that out, that's where you can start to build a repeatable flow of a process. I mean, it's simple to say, but but there's a lot of intricacies of building pipelines and stuff to test things to see what type of messaging works best, a lot of market research and stuff. But once you figure that out, that 4-step system, then you just essentially scale it. And that's when you can, people love the idea of like automated autopilot things, just like they don't have to think and it's just generating them, and not even an income, but just new listeners and growth. Like people, a lot of the times music artists that I've worked with, at least, especially the ones that are on the right track as far as like values go, and they really want to help people, that is rather than chasing fame, they don't care about much else aside from seeing growth. Like as long as there's some growth, then it feels like they're moving forward and the momentum is good. You know what I mean? So it would just be trying to find a way to lean into that so that there is repeatable growth, and not people like, this is the mistake a lot of music artists make, is that they think that every listener is equal. So that like any fan is a fan, you know what I mean? If you get a fan in, like, awesome, they're all the same. It's like, no, you can get fans in for the wrong reason, that they don't get out of your movement what you want, you're trying to communicate to them. So as soon as they stop connecting for whatever reason they brought themselves in on, it's all their choice, they'll leave. And it sounds, it might be easy to explain. It might sound a bit confusing, but it's everyone listening now. And you and I, we've done this to music artists. There's been something that has caught our attention about them. We might have even like loved them for like a month or even less. And then now you'll be like, oh, I forgot all about them. Like I used to listen to them so much like a year ago, but what made you stop listening? It was because they didn't provide any real point of connection that allowed you to resonate with what their creative vision is. That either because you're not compatible with that and you're just not one of their highly targeted listeners, or someone who's highly compatible, with their creative vision. That's what I like to say. You might have just liked the sound of one specific song, but there's more to music than sound, but not enough to keep you around long term. But then on the other hand, we have the artists that we have found that point of connection with, that we would drive across the country to see if they were touring, like ones that were built like an unbreakable connection with. And it's usually because those artists have provided those point of references as well. And but if you're able to do that, then if you're able to do that, so you're going to see much more growth as a result. And that will be where you're able to live wild and free. Because I personally believe to see the opposite of when you don't feel that way, it's when you're feeling like you're pushing everything uphill. You know what I mean? You got to find that point in which you feel like there's a weight off your shoulders and things are just working. And I've really, truly, like absolutely believe that all comes back to making sure that you're on the right path in the first place and doing what you're meant to be doing, not what you told yourself 10 years ago you should be doing, or what other people are telling you to be doing.
Today's episode is sponsored by one of our favorite companies, Urban Drive Style. If you've ever seen our family around town or in the forest, you've probably seen us cruising on our Urban Drive Style e-bikes. Urban Drive Style is a rapidly growing Berlin-based e-mobility company that offers e-bikes that are cool, versatile, and affordable. Their DNA is to reinvent and rethink what bikes and personal mobility should be able to do. These e-bikes are rigorously pragmatic, making you question if you will ever need a car again. It's German engineering at its best.
Oh yeah!
Yet they are as practical as they are sleek in design. With full-length seats like the mopeds from the 70s, great for friends and little lions to ride along with you, a giant vintage-inspired headlight, and gear that offers radical functionality, these e-bikes shine bright and make heads turn. If living wild and free for you means more mobility, eco-friendly alternatives for transportation, having fun and looking cool while doing it, then we couldn't recommend a better product for you than the e-bikes from Urban Drive Style. Use code LIVEASLIONS for 75 euros off your next e-bike purchase. That's LIVEASLIONS for 75 euros off. Ride wild and free, Lions. I mean, you're hearing it through what you're saying. And if you follow Jayson and if, you listen enough, you realize that his whole thing comes a lot from the psychology and the marketing and pulling that together in order to help musicians. And those are the two aspects of what you're doing that I feel like is so unique from so many other people. And what obviously here at Live as Lions, we love is bringing that psychology mindset through it. So with psychology, when it comes to kind of like some behavioral patterns and mindsets, what are some challenges that you have observed that musicians have with trying to be wild and free? Some of like the main ones that you've seen, and maybe an example story you could share with us or something.
Yeah, I really truly believe that all of them like it all comes down to finding that initial point of it is really that simple. And the biggest problems are that people are trying to write to suit trends, or they're trying to create something because they think it will elevate their status if they are able to bring a certain album out to sound or look a certain way. Or maybe it's just because they haven't taken the time to really figure out why they do what they do yet. And it's a big question. It sounds so simple, but when I say to people, why do you write music in the first place? And a lot of the times they go, oh, it's easy. It's because I just want to, create music like that people can dance to, or make them. I write songs about like heartbreaks. So I want people to kind of feel the same way. And it's like, as I do, I want to find more people like me. It's like, that's not good enough. You need to chisel that down to a super refined point so you know exactly who you're here to help. And it takes a long time. And I've dealt with a lot of artists that get frustrated doing that because I'll say to them over and over again, no, got to keep going. Try this exercise, got to keep going, try that. But that's close. But what do you think about this? And they'll say, yes, no, yes. Okay, get the no's out, focus on the yeses. Let's keep diving deeper. And there's been times in which people go, oh my goodness, it's like, I mean, straight up, to be honest, I had a couple of music artists, only like one or two out of the ones I've worked with, not barely any, like, at all, but still there are, at least there have been people that have gotten frustrated and said, I just thought that, I don't know, that when I was coming on here that we're just going to do music marketing. And I say, yeah, well, what's the point unless we have the messaging correct? Otherwise
what
we
you're
could
trying
run
to
out
market.
there and try. Yeah, we could do it, but we're going to be straight back to the drawing board and wasting time. So let's get it right in the beginning. And they're like, yeah, I know, sorry. It's really difficult for me to figure this out sometimes. But the answer is always lying in their lyrics of their songs, or the messaging they've already put out, or in the story of their life that led them to this point, because we're all shaped for different reasons. And that's why I love diving into psychology in a million different ways, whether it be how your audience reacts to your posts, or you yourself, or how the artist works with the creative process, blah, blah, blah. But still, we're all shaped. So, you know what I mean? To become who we are. And because of that, you can't not have a motivation that's not tied to your story. I said in my book, in my first version of it, it's okay if you don't. Like, you can have a different motivation to what your story supports. Then I realized, no, you can't. Your story has to be what shapes your motivation, because that's your life and you've been shaped a certain way to be on that journey. But once you find that, everything else falls into place. But the problem is that a lot of people will get frustrated if it doesn't come easy. The answer is that it's always there. And the moment that you do find it, everything makes sense. It's so funny because the way I actually work with music artists that I'm referring to here is through back and forth voice memos. So I check them every day, and because they're all around the world, they can send them at 3 a.m. my time. It doesn't matter. I can send them back their time.
Like me.
Late, doesn't matter. So and then all of a sudden, if once we get the motivation right, I get messages the next day, just ecstatic, absolutely ecstatic. Just being like, oh my God, it makes sense. And I could do this clothing line, and it could push into even a restaurant business in the future. And this is it. It's way bigger than your music. And we've talked about this too, which I know a lot of stuff that is not ready for release yet, but we've talked about a lot of really cool ways of expanding things out. And once you find that motivation, everything makes sense. It's like the hazy glasses are taken off and you can see your creative vision. And then once you see it, you can control it. And once you can, everything starts to make sense. And it's almost like the frustration that a music artist feels like with writer's block when you can't quite create the song you want. It's like a ginormous block of writer's block when you can't figure out your entire creative vision angle. But once you remove that, I mean, that's the big deal, is like being able to realize exactly what you're here to do. When I first started doing all this as well, a lot of times music artists will say, oh, okay, but what you do is different to me. It's like, no, it's the same thing. I'm just not writing music. You know what I mean? I'm helping people in a way. You will help people in a way. You have a soundtrack. I should write more music to make a soundtrack for mine, but I'm not going to. But essentially, it's like, it's like music artists genuinely need to follow that same progression and process, because when I first started, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. Like, if you've somehow watched my Instagram bio this whole time, it changes every couple of months as I figure out exactly what I want to do. And it was only recently that I changed it to, I help music artists create music-centered movements, because before that, for years, I helped music artists change lives. But now I've realized that's not quite it. And I've found that I help them create movements, and that's narrowing it down even further, but I'm still figuring it out. But at least now every decision I make can be held to that, like graded to that standard. It's like, is what I'm about to do going to help music artists create music-centered movements? If the answer is no, then I don't do it. You know, what's the point? You get offered by like brands or other things to endorse them and stuff. And it's like, why? Why would I do that? It doesn't make any sense. And I don't care if they pay me. That's not what I'm here to do. And it's not even like a thing of trying to be like, look how great I am because I am, you know, loyal and or whatever, and I've got integrity. It's not even about that. It's just, what's the point? You know what I mean? It's not going to do anything. Like, so, but once you figure it out, yeah, it'll really help you be able to shape it down, but don't expect it to come easy, and don't expect it to be something that once you figure it out that it stays in cement, because it'll change as you change. As your story grows, you'll realize more and more who you're really here to help. And eventually, I mean, you don't want to fall into that trap, as I said, of ending up holding yourself to a 5-year-old motivation when you should be have changed it and adapted to stay fresh, and as you really grow into the person that you're been put on this earth to become.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the first conversations that you and I had was, you asked me, like, point on, have you wanted to expand this message? Have you wanted to do something bigger than just the music? And it was like somebody was like piercing into my soul and like, you know, taking all my hidden treasures and dreams and being like, hey, is there something there? And that was it. I mean, you were one of the first people that said, is there something more to Liz and the Lions than just the music? And that's when I was really processing and thinking about expanding this into a company and into a bigger market and to more platforms, I think, to take this message. And I didn't know how I could do that. And that's something that you always kind of have to look at and remember as a musician. And that's where it comes back to the weapon, is saying the music isn't the thing. It's your message. It's your story. It's you. And it's what you're trying to say. That's basically just being kind of funneled through that. And so whether you're using it, you know, the guitar or the voice, or you're going to start, you know, the clothing brand or writing a book or whatever it is, those are just platforms for the same message for different audiences in order to be able to experience that. And I think that's something that you're amazing at. And you're the one who really, you know, kicked my behind into taking this to the next level and to making this into where we are now, which is Live as Lions. And so that was something where, for me, with the psychology, because you came in and you were like, well, what's stopping you? What are your fears? Why are you, you know, why is the ceiling just at the music? And why aren't you breaking through that and going to the next level? And let's figure out what it is that's stopping you from being able to really take this message even farther. So with that, and marketing. So figuring out the psychology behind musicians, what it is that who they are, what they believe, what their message is. How do you then help them take that and market it? Because marketing is just, man, honestly, especially for musicians and creatives listening to this that are just starting out or really struggling in this area, it's so hard. Marketing is basically, in my opinion, is like, just let everybody just, you know, rip open your soul and your heart and know who you are, because that's the only way you're going to get fans to connect to you is being vulnerable and being who you are. But so how do you help people take that message and market it so that people will actually connect to it?
I think it comes down to two main things. One is knowing that the person that you're trying to speak to is someone that is highly resonant and highly compatible with your message, and someone you can genuinely help. Because if they're not, then you shouldn't be like, I won't say wasting your time, but essentially allocating time toward that, because they're not going to be someone that stays around long term, because they don't connect naturally with what you do. You said in the very beginning that you want to make sure that people have got the limp, you know what I mean? To understand that they've been through that thing. That's it. Your people that you're speaking to need to have the same limp that you have, so they can look to you and feel connected with you. And then your music becomes, I don't want to get too far into it because I could talk about it easily for half an hour, but essentially like a inbuilt behavioral trigger. So when they start to feel a certain way, they'll reach for your music over the world's biggest music artist, because you're the only one that can provide them that form of relief from the headache they're feeling. But in order to be able to prescribe them the right medication, you need to know that your medication can solve their issue. And if it does it well, that's what keeps them around long term. Simplifying a complex idea here, but I'm sure it makes sense.
Yeah.
But that's the first one, is making sure that you have to, like, the people you're trying to help, you can help. Secondly, is to get over yourself. Okay. This is the thing that a music artist don't do. And this is where it becomes challenging as well, is because we all have this idea. And when I say we all, I mean myself as well, that on social media, you just want to be able to create the message, put it out into the world, and just wake up the next day to, oh, people are interested and they're doing this and they're resonating and stuff. And that will come eventually. Okay. But it's a bit of a grind in the beginning. And a lot of people aren't prepared to put that work in, because it's easier to sit back and complain and say how hard it is to stand out. And I put posts up, but no one's interested. It's like, what are you doing actively? Like, oh, well, I'm putting posts up. Yeah. Once your posts are up, what are you doing? You're like, well, what do you mean? What am I meant to do? It's like, one, are people commenting on your post? And if the answer is yes, are you responding to them? Are you opening conversations with them? Are you taking note of the different types of behavior or audience behaviors, like when compared to this segment that would kind of exhibit their level of connection to your music? What I mean by that is like people who are more connected to you will likely comment on posts. They might even DM you. So if people are, oh my goodness, music artists who don't respond to DMs they get is the biggest wasted opportunity, because these people are not even just saying, I'm interested. They're like, I want to reach out and talk to you. So that's why I mean, it took forever, but I had to live by what I say, right? But when my book was selling, I'd have about 100 emails and about 100 DMs a day when my book was selling crazy every day. And I did not want to let anyone not be responded to. So every single person, I would take 2 to 3 hours a day, every single day for, it was like 6 months the book was selling crazy, but I'll probably say about 3 or 4 months of this craziness. I would respond to every single person that emailed me. And it was because of that people, they don't forget that stuff. Because realistically, like, again, not to get too much into the psychology of it, but there's always a negative behavior trigger that drives people to action, specifically when it comes down to social media. Like if we're completely content and we're really happy with life, we don't pick our phone up. We're not, because that's boredom. It is a minor negative trigger. But what if it's a more so like loneliness? Like I'm really sad. I don't want to miss out on what my friends are doing. So I'm going to open up Instagram and check out stories or Snapchat or whatever, you know? But you have to find like people who have that negative behavioral trigger, what's driving them to that social platform, and then be able to capitalize on that. But the reason everyone opens social media applications is because they're looking for real, authentic human connection. It's been this way since the beginning of time. We look for human connection, and we've seemed to have forgotten that, in the digital world of today. But once you know that that's what people are looking for, you can cater your behavior and the posts you make to facilitating that desire. And one of the biggest ones is that people DM you, they want to get closer to you, so be closer to them. And don't respond with like a text response. Hit a voice message and just be like, speak to them, and they won't forget you, because it's a big thing for them to reach out. But for them to wake up and see, even if you're just a small music artist getting started, if they've reached out to you for a reason and they see you've sent them a voice memo that's just for them, it's like the reason Cameo is so big. I've been saying this for years, way before Cameo. Like I was building a music industry style app thing back in the day with a startup, and we implemented this type of functionality because connection matters so much. And it's like a mini Cameo they get for free of like, or you could do a video and just like, hey, what's up? I just want to say thanks so much for that. Like, I'm just reaching back out to you, blah, blah. That level of personal connection goes a long way, like way more than you may even consider. So again, you have to get over yourself. If you think that you're not important enough to respond to people like that, do it, because they're going to care and it's going to matter. But if you're on the other end of the scale too far and you start to think you're above that type of stuff, then you're never going to grow either. So you have to do that, reply to comments that people are leaving. And if no one's leaving comments, I mean, even if they are, you should be doing this anyway. But if you know that your motivation is, say in my case, it was to release music that helps people along their journey through mental health, I should be out in groups on Facebook, communicating with people, talking about mental health, putting my message out there, helping people with their issues, giving advice, doing that kind of stuff. And then when people click back on my profile going, who is this guy? He's always here all the time and he's very involved in this. And he's super helpful. I see him helping other people all the time. All those people in the shadows that may not be commenting or liking are still watching you. They'll click through on your profile. You then have your profile. So it's like optimized to be like, I help your headache, you know, figuratively speaking, but with what I do, come join my circle. And you have your own Facebook group or something that they can come and join, that you're putting content in there as well. Right. And then you drive your Instagram to that as well. But then you have this like central circle for the people who are truly highly compatible with your message. And that's the point that you should be like focusing on as well. But in order to get to that point, you have to be actively involved in groups. And that's a big thing that I tell people, and I mean this with love, but when I say get over yourself, a lot of music artists will say, but who am I like to talk about this stuff? Like, I'm not an expert in my field. Like, I'm not, qualified. I don't have any credentials. And I hate those words because it doesn't matter. Like, I wrote a book on the topic and I have no degrees in marketing. I learned marketing myself and I studied people who are successful and I categorized it all. I've just lived in the music industry, but who am I? I'm a guy with a passion to help people get their messages heard because I've seen firsthand what they're able to do. So you right now listening, or whatever you're trying to work out, you have that message. Once you be able to find what your message even is, you have to find it and then you have to shout it till you run out of voice. And that's one of the big things that music artists say. They're like, oh, but I don't want to spam people. It's like, we're exposed to a bazillion posts every single day. Do you think people are going to notice if they see one of your posts twice? No, they're going to forget about you within the next 5 minutes. People are not going to get sick of you. And if they are getting sick of you, this is another thing too. Music artists, when they first start pushing their message out there into the world, will usually come back to me and say, I'm actually losing followers. And some people have said, does that mean I'm doing something wrong, or that your strategy doesn't work? And it's like, no, all the people, say you have 500 followers when you first come to me or whatever, and you start losing followers because you start posting more with an actual like focused message, those people are leaving because they're not compatible with your message. So I'd rather have 1,000 followers that are music artists who are here to make a real difference in the world than the 20,000 or whatever I have now, that some of them aren't like that. Like, I would wish I could get rid of them because they're not compatible. I don't care about the number. I care about who like actually making a difference. And trust me, you want to get rid of people that aren't compatible because you'll get better organic reach. Instagram will treat you fairer because all these irrelevant profiles will no longer hear from you. Like, if I put out an email to my email list and I see the unsubscribes, I'm like, good, like, hop off my list if it's not relevant, because I don't want to spam your inbox. And if you're not wanting to read my content, then cool. Like, then I can just get better deliverability, I guess, to the people who are going to do that. But that hesitation stops so many people from speaking up about stuff, is because they think to themselves, one, who am I to say this? But what if I lose followers? And what if people like don't like me and whatever I have to say? It's like, cool, then find the ones who are going to like you. Right. Your current fan base likely isn't highly compatible with your message if you haven't been talking about it yet. Some might have subconsciously figured it out that that's what draws them towards you. But unless they've been figuratively beat over the head with it, they probably don't understand it in the busy world of today. So when people start leaving, it's because they're like, oh yeah, this isn't an artist that I'm compatible with. And you've got to learn to not take that as an insult, because it's not enough to just try to hold on to the amount of followers you have, keep posting online and hope that you go viral somehow. Like, no, you're gonna, it's a marathon, not a sprint. You're gonna have to put that work in each day. And if you're prepared to do just a little bit, all it might take is you can get everything you need to get done in less than an hour each day, 100%, like easily. And you could do that before you go to bed, just on your mobile phone, or you could do it of a morning when you're eating your breakfast. But you can incorporate it into your life, and you'll notice that in 2 weeks' time, you're way further ahead than you were 2 weeks prior. And the more that you get comfortable stepping outside of what you deem to be what your lane is, the better the results will be. And I'm saying that, again, people have said to me, oh yeah, but you're an extrovert. You've done this a million times. And it's like, that's how little you know about me. I'm a huge introvert. Like, I'm definitely not an extrovert. I'm so drained by any form of social activity. But I was like that myself. The reason I'm saying that now is because I learned it. Like, I came online and people were saying to me, oh, when I was putting Instagram posts up, you should do a podcast. I'm like, who would listen to me talk? Now I manage one of my businesses as an inner circle for music artists, where I'm doing 3 or sometimes 4 podcasts a week in this that people are paying me money to listen to. Like, and let the market decide. Like, who are you to say what people like and what they don't like? Get it out there and let them tell you what they think. But you will find and be pleasantly surprised that if you're able to find who you're here to help, everyone is looking for human connection, and you reaching that hand out toward them when they're going through something that you can, like, you've either been through, give them a little bit of advice, or just give them that metaphorical hug that makes them feel like they're not going through it alone. Trust me, you will find it so hard to get those people away from you. They'll be following you for the rest of their days.
Well, I mean, that's always something that I have said, that I measure success, and especially when it came to music and playing shows or whatnot, by the connection. So my band would always just kind of laugh and joke and say, okay, well, we need to, schedule this much time for the show, and then a few hours after the show for Liz to connect to whoever wants to come and talk. Because I would, I love playing and I love having that moment on stage, but there is always that barrier. And so I always made sure I do make sure after shows to come and to just allow room for people to talk. And sometimes you get, 2-second conversations, but sometimes you get really long conversations. And most of the shows end up with me or, people in the band sitting there and talking with people for hours. And I think what I've noticed, especially now in the era of COVID and musicians trying to navigate, well, how do we create that connection now that we are not actually able to physically connect with anybody? And I think you touched on that a lot, is like we have social media, and that is a way for us to continue to reach people. And for me, it's like, if I put something out there and I put a post out there and I get a like, great, wonderful. But if I get a message from somebody who actually took time in their day, that their day is as precious as mine, if not more, and they actually, said, I want to connect to this person and I want to just tell you what that meant to me. Oh my gosh. For me, that's like $1 million right there. Like that's the connection point. That is the level of success for me, that I'm like, that was great. And that's how I measure it. We could have like the most incredible show and I didn't talk to anybody. I'm like, it was okay. I didn't connect. Or I could put something great out on social media and we get thousands of likes, but I didn't connect with anybody. So it's not success. And so what would you say for everybody who's listening right now, who's a musician, who is struggling to get shows, who is struggling to get out there to connect with people, and, the land of musicians in the COVID industry, how would you say they can still navigate through that and bring connection, building on what you're saying?
I said earlier that one of the biggest points is to be able to research who you're trying to speak to. And I feel like a great starting point, before you do any of that market research, is imagine that you're not creating your content from you now to try to get the crowd to listen to it. And that's what usually people imagine, is because we're music artists, right? You imagine being on stage and then you have the crowd. But, an artist like yourself, I refer to what you do really often when I'm talking to other music artists about this type of thing, because you nail it. But you don't see them as the crowd. You see them as individual people that make up the crowd, that have their individual stories and reasons to come to one of your shows. So in order to be able to realize that your content is not for everyone, it's for a specific person, you need to create content understanding where they're at. And in order to do that, you have to have some form of direction and to think outside of yourself and imagine you're speaking to someone. So why not imagine you're speaking to yourself in the past when you were going through that issue? Say like, I know you're feeling like this. Like, assume things. Like, don't just say, hey, here's my new single, check it out. You're like, hey, have you ever felt like this? Or if you're going through this right now, this is for you. Like, prescribe them your stuff. And that's where people can feel like, when they're just like random meme, fail video, advertisement on repeat. And then it's like, bam, this post out of nowhere that's like, that's exactly how I'm feeling. Like, okay, I'm curious now, and curiosity is what drives action. So everything you create should be leaning onto like creating curiosity, without being clickbaity, because people can see that, but be authentic, but create curiosity. If you create it, people will follow. So create curiosity. So because they'll lean into that. They'll click on your post and want to check out more about you. But when people do reach out, understand that what they're really looking for, because the bait you set out into the world was to bring them in on human connection. They look like, something they can relate to. That what they're really looking for, like the answer is they're looking for human connection. So like, understand the ways that you can communicate with them. The closer you can get to an actual authentic human like experience will be the more connection they build as a result. So one of the lowest things you can do as far as like effectiveness when it comes to building connection is anything to do with text, because how unhuman and unnatural is ones and zeros forming like black lines on a white background of like words. Like, as far as systematic processing and stuff, it's so far removed from a natural human authentic thing. Right. But something like you and I are doing right now is fairly close to it as far as the digital world goes. Like, aside from being in an actual physical proximity and like having to do it through a screen, this is still like real time. like we've got video on, we've got audio on, like it's very sensory of like a human experience. Now, obviously you can't do this for everyone, but if you have a fan base and people are all sitting at home during COVID and you are too, then you know their behavior, like you understand what they're going through. So find a common interest or something that aligns with your branding and do some form of virtual hangout where everyone can come and hang out. If you find out that your audience like all like a certain video game, then do a game night where everyone can come on and play together. They won't forget that. Like that's the stuff that people will remember for ages. But as far as working back down the chain of connection, like until like VR is big, video is the best way to do that. And without one-on-one open like connection, like sorry, when I say connection there, I mean like an actual virtual connection like this, a real-time call. You could do video, stories, being authentic, not putting too many filters on your photos and video, like not sorry photos, but on your video as well, because the more natural you can make it seem like real life, because we don't see real life with filters on, that works on like a neuroaesthetic programming level that people feel comfortable and more at home with that. That's why on TikTok, all the videos that are just no filters, just they've thrown their camera around, videoed a quick thing, they outperform, and ad agencies are realizing this. All their 4K depth of field, beautifully lit ad content doesn't do so well because people could scroll straight by it because they know it's an ad. Yet real authentic human connection of like looking through a phone lens that looks like their phone does when they're doing it in real life, that's where they feel comfortable and at home. So if you can create content that leans into that, then you're going to win off that as well. But opt for those types of things. Meaning if you get a DM from someone, yeah, you can write back with text, but they'll probably forget you. Like real talk, they will. Like, because even they might remember you. I reached out to you one time and spoke to you, but if you want to make sure that they have far less chance of forgetting about you, then respond with a voice memo. That's real easy to do. If you've got a shirt on and you're dressed, do a video one and just be like, hey, thanks so much. It might feel weird and foreign to do it because you've never done it before, but they don't know. They might think that you do this for everyone that reaches out, but because you did it for them, they'll be thankful. So that's the type of thing. And don't cut conversations off, because these people who are reaching out to you will likely, or stand the best chance, so I would say, of becoming a true fan over time that might even be so committed and driven that you could build some form of street team out of them to say, hey, I've got a new song out. Could you help me promote it? And they will just sing your praises to the ends of the earth. Like, these are the people who are stepping forward to be like the elders in your cult, if you want to say it that way. People who can help you run it, like see potential in people that are reaching out to you, because if you dismiss everyone as the crowd, you're never going to let the people that can shine. Right. A lot of music artists say, oh, I want to get signed to a label. I want to get signed to an agency, management, like teams and stuff. Like, where's my team? Like, I want someone to elevate me. And they don't realize if you stay in control of your own journey and build it up each day, you'll eventually build a team out of your most committed listeners. And these are the ones who are going to be both supporting you and being the beacon in the night that promotes you as well. Right. So yeah, we're all in COVID and we've got lockdowns, to various degrees, all over the world. But once you understand that because of that, everyone is on their phones, right, and they're all feeling lonely and disconnected from the world. We've never needed connection more than we do now. So now's the time to get your message out there and to start, as I said, grinding, getting into groups, talking, putting work in every single day, because that's where you're going to see the growth you're looking for.
I think that's it. It's so many musicians and so many of my friends were just so stifled by this thing because they were like, I can't play. I can't get out there. And I saw so many of them being, just slipping into depression, just anxiety and fear. Like, what do I do? And of course there's like real actual issues. How am I going to get paid? I can't play. I can't get paid. But I think a lot of them also were just really, and myself included, just what do I do now? If I can't get out there with my music, then, there's part of me that's just being cut off. When coming back full circle to what we were talking about, when you realize the music is just the weapon, it's just the thing, the tool that you're going to use, but your message and who you are is really your power. And that's really what we're doing here, is we're trying to take that message and get it to people. Well, then COVID is just it's just a detour, and we need to find different platforms and different ways and to connect to people to our message. I mean, for me, that was literally how we started Live as Lions, because I was like, well, I can't play shows right now, but I have this message that I'm so convicted by. I have to get it out there. We have to find different channels, and we have to have different ways to connect to people. And so that's how we started this whole thing. And I think that's something that you're brilliant at, is really helping people remember, if there's a roadblock here, it's just because you're supposed to go down this other path, and let's figure out how we're take you there. And in general, that is, that's why I see you as a lion. And that's why I wanted you on the show today, because you are incredible at, going into those caves with people. You're not afraid to go there with people. You're not afraid to help them in that time, and then find those treasures and bring it back out, and, just give all that goodness to the world. And you are one of the people that I see just living completely wild and free. You know who you are, and you know exactly what you're called to do. And that is why I wanted to have you on this show today. But
thank you so much for having me.
Yes. But before you leave, we have to have you finish some of the sentences. So I'll give you a sentence and you finish it for me. Okay.
Okay.
Are you nervous? Total.
Never.
No.
No, that's a joke. Of course, that's a joke.
Constant level of fear just keeps you on your toes.
Yeah.
No.
It's like, in the Avengers, where he says, Bruce Banner says, that's the secret. I'm always angry. With the Hulk, It's like, I'm always nervous. That's my secret.
I'm constantly nervous. That's awesome. Okay. Yeah. All right, here we go. Okay. The Australian artist that you recommend right now is?
Oh, okay. I got to go with The Last Martyr. They're Monica Strutt. She's in a similar space to me. She helps music artists as well, but I've been keeping up with what they've been doing, and they're absolutely killing it. So yeah, shout out to The Last Martyr for sure.
Awesome. Okay. Top reason for people to read your book?
To find what your message is and figure exactly your marketing approach to be able to effectively communicate it with people, so you can grow the audience that your music deserves.
Awesome. What is the biggest marketing failure?
Yeah. Anything I did without any research put into it, where I just, it's good to be able to go with your gut sometimes, but you should at least have a rough direction sorted with your gut decision, so you're on the right path, but not where you just throw money into the bin, essentially. Right. So yeah, my biggest marketing failure was probably running Facebook ads without putting enough thought into them. If I just took another 40 minutes to refine it, I would have gotten better results. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Okay. And last but not least, to live as lions means?
Oh, I'd say to be unapologetically convicted.
Ooh.
That's the word of today. I love it. I'm taking it. It's mine now. You didn't trademark it at time.
That's amazing. All right, Jayson, thank you so much for being on the show. You guys, please check him out. He is just as darling as he sounds. Jayson John Evans is his Instagram handle. I'm northbound.com, and please get the 40 Songwriter book. It is amazing. It definitely changed my life. I give it to all my musician friends, and it's changed them. So check it out. All right, Jayson, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me. I will say, if anyone here that's listening wants a copy of the book, just hit me up on Instagram, Jayson, John Evans. And I'll give you a copy. Not a problem. You don't have to pay for it.
There you go. They're just giving out those treasures for free. All right, everybody, be wild, be free, and live as lions.